صلى الله عليه وسلم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وآله وصحبه ومن والاه. أما بعد. Hadith number 151. This hadith relates to what to be said when you are on your dying bed. Mother Aisha tells us that the Prophet ﷺ, during his illness, in which he passed away,
جعل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عند موته يدخل يديه في الماء فيمسح بهما وجهه ويقول: لا إله إلا الله إن للموت سكرات.
He would dip his hands in water in a container next to him that had water in it, and then he would wipe his face and say, لا إله إلا الله إن للموت لسكرات. None has the right to be worshipped except Allah. Death does indeed contain agony. So the Prophet ﷺ was suffering at his death bed. And this confuses people because they think that the other hadith of Bara ibn Azib, goes against it. The Prophet tells us in the hadith that the believer, when the angels of death take his soul, they take it so nicely and softly and kindly, as if it's a drop of water coming out from a skin container. So when it drops nicely and gently. Unlike the soul of a disbeliever, they take it as if they're taking a rod of iron with thorns in it from a wet piece of wool. So as they take it out, it snatches the wool into pieces. So this seemed to confuse some when the Prophet says death does indeed contain agony. There's no contradiction at all. The agony and the hardship a Muslim suffers is before his soul is extracted from his body. And this is to erase his sins if he's sinful like me and you, or to raise his status at the side of Allah Azza wa Jal if he is sinless, like the Prophet ﷺ. But when the soul is extracted, taken out, it is taken out softly and gently without any hardship. So this, I hope, manages to erase such confusion. The following hadith is something that we have to do our level best to memorize. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wassalam,
لا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله وحده. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. لا إله إلا الله له الملك وله الحمد. لا إله إلا الله ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله.
None has the right to be worshipped except Allah. And Allah is the greatest. Now focus on these words. None has the right to be worshipped except Allah, and Allah is the greatest. The hadith, the original hadith says, Allah says, none has the right to be worshipped except me, and I am the greatest. So Allah reiterates and emphasizes what is being said and confirms it. None has the right to be worshipped except Allah alone. Allah says this about himself. None has the right to be worshipped except Allah alone without any partner. Allah repeats this. None has the right to be worshipped except Allah. To Him belongs all sovereignty and praise. None has the right to be worshipped except Allah, and there is no might and no power except with Allah. What is the use of saying these words over and over and over again? Well, the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ says, whoever says this while he's sick and he dies, fire will not touch him. So memorizing these words, and when you're ill and sick, repeating them over and over again definitely would add a lot of value to you, so that this would be your pass not to touch or be touched by hellfire. Chapter 52, instruction for the one nearing death. What if someone is dear to us or next to us, or we're close to them, and they're about to die? What should we do? What should we help him with? Well, Hadith 153, the Prophet says, alayhi salam,
من كان آخر كلامه لا إله إلا الله دخل الجنة.
he whose last words are, none has the right to be worshipped except Allah, will enter paradise. So the sunnah is that when someone is on his deathbed, and we can see that we say to him, say La ilaha illallah, to ensure that this is his last words, not to repeat it over and over again. So if he says it once and does not say anything else till he dies, he falls under this hadith and will enter paradise with the grace of Allah. But we should not repeat it if he does not say anything else. So even if he says La ilaha illallah and stays for a whole hour not saying anything, that's sufficient. But if he says La ilaha illallah and after a few moments he says, I'm thirsty, give me a drink, we give him a drink and say to him, say La ilaha illallah. If he says it, we refrain from saying anything. If he says, what time is it? We tell him it's 5 o'clock. Say La ilaha illallah. So we tried our level best to ensure that this is the last thing he utters, without shoving it down his throat or nagging him, say La ilaha illallah, say La ilaha illallah, say, and so that he's not fed up of it. But if he says it and he says nothing else, then he falls under this beautiful reward, which is, inshallah, that he will enter paradise. This is all the time we have. Until we meet next time, I leave you fi amanillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Sallallahu ala Muhammad, sallallahu ala Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.